Hey guys, so I'm just making this quick intro before I show you this podcast interview type thing that I did with K4shera. I just want to talk about why I wanted to bring K4shera onto the show. I didn't really talk about that, and that's the whole point of this show. But essentially, he was the pretty much one of the first teams to run crypto in the West since season 6. But he was actually the first part of the first team that ran Crypto Caustic specifically on Kings Canyon. He did that in the first Autumn Circuit tournament. So he clearly had a very fast read on the meta, and it clearly helped his team get the results that they wanted early on. And I think that's a really important skill. I think that is the defining theme of this last Autumn Circuit. So that's why I wanted to talk to him. Even in my own experience, I remember like a few days after the season 6 patch, I wrote like a 15 tweet like basically rant about how Watson was going to get phased out of the meta because of so many cryptos. And other than that, I remember talking to GSD, Gneska, Strafey, and Dell about how I thought Wraith Crypto Caustic was the best comp in the game even before season 6. And I can go into that another video, of course, but I love meta reading. I think it's really important. I think it's really important to stay like one step ahead of your opponents. You can be a worse team and still do better because you read the meta better, right? So that's the theme for this. But otherwise, this is the first time I'm doing this. I don't have any producers. I don't have any experience doing this. The audio's a little bit scuffed, but otherwise, or give me a little bit of slack, but also give me your thoughts, opinions, suggestions, all of that, and also tell me who you want to see on the show. This is for competitive Apex Legends, so like professional players and people in that scene. Suggest who you want to see. But otherwise, enjoy the video. Okay, I am ready. So, before we start, I just want to talk about what I'm going to be trying to do with this. So right now, there's not really any like platforms where like pro players can talk about basically anything, any of their thoughts related to the game. I myself, I say a lot of dumb stuff on Twitter, and there's zero nuance, zero thought into it, like 2 sentences, and I always make people mad. So I thought, hey, why not have a platform where I will let other pro players talk about their thoughts in like a deep, meaningful manner, and also I can maybe interject a thought or two, so I don't seem as dumb, which I am. I'm really dumb, but I feel like it's a win-win for everyone. I know a lot of people also want this type of content because again, there's none of it, and we want to hear like pro players talk about their thoughts and whatnot. So that's
Yeah, I
the
think
idea
so.
of
Like,
this.
I think it can be like really interesting, and I'm really honored for being the first one for you to invite.
Well, I appreciate it
Uh,
too because you're taking a gamble on all this. I don't have any experience doing this, so um, I appreciate it. But for people who don't know, I'm an analyst for energy. I look at zones a lot. I do loop paths and stuff. I meta read. I sometimes suggest like drop spots. But otherwise, K4shera, just give us an intro and talk about yourself a little bit, like your history and like competitive
yeah.
esports and Apex, and also what team you play for,
Okay,
obviously.
so I'm K4shera. I'm now IGL for new, and I've been playing Apex since day one, and I've been trying to play competitive Apex since the beginning. Since I don't even remember being tournaments, like there was no tournaments, and I was already thinking about competitive. In Apex, in the beginning, I just played those kill race tournaments, and we were pretty good at it, like my team. After that, we qualified for X Games. We went to a kill race tournament first, a LAN tournament in France. Then we qualified for X Games. Then we signed with Lazarus before X Games. Played Poland LAN. Went to the JLL final, and then this year, like the whole ALGS year, I played as a new team with ASCII and Postkill. After that, in the summer, I've been playing with mixes, and then I decided to go back and play with Postkill once again, and created this new esports, which is like our team. It's not like an organization or nothing like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I've been IGLing with Wraith before, and now I'm maining Crypto as an IGL. Yeah, I guess that's a really quick way to kind of talk about what is K4shera.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of experience. And for the people who maybe don't know or maybe don't watch like the EU scene, there are some, NA fans in here um, who only watch NA, which is fine. But this man got third in Autumn Circuit 1, which is pretty impressive, and then went to get second in the Autumn Circuit playoff. So two
Yeah,
huge
exactly.
results, right? So I just want to underline that because this guy is insane, chat, and whoever's watching. Okay, he's really good. He knows what he's talking about. So, and
Thank
in
you.
saying that, yeah, let's get started on the first topic. So, I want to first talk about the meta shift because that's actually sort of the theme of this first episode. I feel like since the beginning of Apex, there have been subtle meta shifts. However, it seems like this meta shift in particular, season 6, was the biggest one,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, definitely. Like more characters went into competitive play. Uh, you have many other ways to approach the game, and not only like Wraith Path Watson, and let's see who's the first one to get into the zone. Like some teams played with Gibby Edge. I remembered Alliance playing with Caustic, and it was the only team. But yeah, this was without a doubt the biggest meta change in Apex, and I think one of the main things that made me the player that I am and the results that we had in this last circuit was definitely the meta change.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to talk about that later because I think that's actually a skill that a lot, at least some pro players aren't actually good at. And it's not me trying to throw shade, but I think it's an under talked about and underdeveloped skill, like meta reading, right? Like reading the meta.
Yeah,
Um, because at the end of the day, you want to play what's most optimal, right? I mean, this is obvious, but like, um, I think the question is like, how do you read the meta, right? Like, how do you actually determine what is like the most optimal way to play the game? Um, I mean, I have my own thoughts on that, but like in
like
relation to how you're playing, like how do you go about that personally without leaking anything? Like, you don't leak any strats,
yeah.
by the way, but like, you know,
No, like there's not really a secret in my opinion. It's how everyone thinks about the game. Since some people and most of the teams that I know like just try to copy what's the hottest meta, like the best team, what's the best team doing, and they just try to replicate that. And a lot of the metas that are getting created, it's basically that. It's the best team with the best result having a meta, creating a meta, and then all the other teams trying to replicate that. Um, I don't see the game like that, and I think that's what differentiate me from the rest. Um, and I know a lot of IGLs like don't see the game like that, but um, yeah, it's basically watching the character changes and thinking like, what can this add to competitive? Like the competitive state, the zones, the way you play, and your team, of course, because um, mainly I decided to go with this meta, watching like my teammates, like watching, seeing their strengths and their weaknesses, and saying like this can work. And yeah, and then you need to try out. You need to get some data. You need to see how good it is. What are the flaws on the meta or the characters that you're playing, and then playing around that. Like, is it worth it to keep trying? Is it worth it to keep pushing, or should we change and try something new? Um, that's what we did in the beginning. The only constant that we had was Wraith Crypto. We had Watson, we had Caustic, and now we are trying out Gibby as well. But yeah, Wraith and Crypto, since the change on Crypto where it could destroy the Watson's ultis, yeah, that was basically the breaking point for me to play Crypto, because I thought he was strong before, but there was no way to counter Watson, so it was kind of useless since everyone was playing Watson. But since that change, I think it was hands down the best character, like to get info to have utility. Because even Pathfinder, the only thing that give you is the first zone and high grounds and like movement. But I think like in Apex, you want to have more utility than movement most of the times. Because that's what's going to help you to not only to win the fight in front of you, but to sustain you against other fights around you. Because it's not only about winning the fight in front of you; it's about like holding the third party and not allowing other teams to take advantage on your aggressiveness. So yeah, that's basically it. And we could see a lot of caustics entering the meta. Gibby caustics playing full edge. A lot of teams playing full edge with Blood Gibby as well. So a lot of new metas about teams playing full edge. And yeah, I just wanted to play for position, because if no one is playing for position, I can play for the best position every time. And that's what went through my mind since the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've actually had some pro players ask me, like, is it... I think they knew the answer, right? Like, they asked me, like, should we play zone if everyone is playing edge? Even if the comp that they're playing zone with seemingly, like, seems worse than the edge team, right? Because right now, like, edge teams with Gibby, they go into zone with like evos. They're overlooted. They have bats, like, you know, so many bats. They seem super strong,
Yeah.
but at the same time, if no one is playing those positions that, like, in a very streamlined manner, gets you to late game very easily, then it's even stronger. So
It's basically easier to approach the game. And it's not about like not being good to play full edge. It depends on the teams, and that's what I'm always saying. Because in EU, one thing happened more or less like in I think it was PGL Showdown this autumn, where the Alliance was always shifting metas. Like they were creating new metas, and people were trying to replicate what Alliance was doing. But in my opinion, teams didn't have the players that Alliance did. So it's not really about copying other teams, but knowing what your team needs to actually have good results. And I think that was my biggest flaw, like this year and in the beginning of the year and the mid-year, because I wasn't able to see that clearly. Like I was trying to do different things, but not the best thing for my team. Like I was trying to replicate maybe other teams. I was trying I was not reading my team well, and that's one thing that changed now. Like I wasn't going to do what everyone else is doing. I'm gonna do what I think it's best for my team, and it went well. Like we could have won this playoff. We had 3 games that we should have won, and if we were a team that practiced more and with more experience, we would have won this playoff 100%. And yeah, I think teams now realizing that Caustic is broken and Crypto is broken is just too late. Like Season 8 is 1 month from now, and Season 8 is gonna change the meta. And this Crypto Caustic being too strong, they have been strong since the beginning of the season. Not now, not after playoffs. So
yeah.
I think teams are like missing that point where they don't need to actually replicate the best teams. They need to figure out what's the best for them.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of goes into what I said earlier. Like, if you can read the meta before everyone else, you're gonna see like immediate success, and they're not. And I think we saw this actually in both, at least NA and EU. Like for example, like Cooler was playing. It seemed like Cooler like was not reading the meta correctly. And even like for example CLG, I'm not like targeting these teams, chat, or whoever's watching. I'm just saying, like for example, CLG was playing Wraith Path Watson from Skyhook East, and I'm sure they could have done better on another comp. Like they're very capable players. Like it has nothing to do with their actual skill, but maybe had they had a better read on the meta, they would have done better this autumn. Um, and
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, you talked about cooler, and not that you're targeting, but because we all know that they could have done way better. Like they
yeah,
should be on the playoffs. They should be a top team on playoffs. Like they have the skill. Like they are all good players, awesome players. Gnask is a really good IGL, but there was something missing, and I think you're right. Like the meta was missing, like the comp that they are using and the way they were approaching the game, and that's a little bit different of IGLing. It's more like what you do, like you said, like you see how, drops, like how to rotate, how to approach the game, and that's not really like IGLing inside game. Is something that you need to think outside of the game, and it's not because you're a super good IGL that you're gonna be able to read every time. Like I was able to read this meta well, but it's not 100% that next season I'm gonna read the meta well again. I can fuck up, and yeah, people will fuck up. It's a BR. It's like sometimes it's super random, and it's super hard to predict things and how things were going to happen. But yeah, you just have to keep trying and not being afraid of trying new things and actually understanding what you're trying out and what you want to see, basically. Because sometimes people just try metas just for the sake of it. They have bad results, and okay, this meta is shit. And that's nothing like that. Like our last meta for the playoffs, we actually didn't do well in any scrims. But I knew that the final was not going to be like scrims. The teams are not going to behave like scrims, and yeah, that's basically it. Like you have to have the mindset of knowing what is going to happen, and I think that was the biggest flaw for most of the teams, like in EU playing full edge Gibby Caustic, because Gibby Caustic in scrims it's so easy to play. Like I know if I play that with my team, I'm gonna smash in scrims every time. Because like zone 3, zone 4, it's 10 teams, so it's so easy to get to the end zone. But when there's like 20 teams in zone 4, like there's no way. If you're playing full edge, you're gonna have to fight, and even if you win that fight, you're not gonna have like late game guaranteed. Like you can get thirded, you're gonna get another team holding you, and yeah, I don't think I think it's good, but it's not that good for everyone trying to use it.
yeah, definitely. I've thought about that a lot. I think playing Edge with a Gibby comp is probably just as good as playing zone, but the caveat is you have to be probably the best team mechanically in the lobby, or top 3 mechanically. Your team
Exactly.
it's not for everyone. You can't actually be successful with it.
Yeah, you need to
Anyone.
use your abilities the best way you can. Your IGL needs to know and be aware of every position that you can take and what you can do and what you cannot do. You need to be mechanically really insane. You need to hit your shots. It cannot be a team that rely on character skills, and that's not easy for most of the teams, because there's always something missing. Like it's hard to have a tier 1 team where everyone is aim god and everyone is super good mechanically. Like there's 3-4 teams in Apex like that. All the rest always miss something, and you need to know those flaws. And to know those flaws, you cannot just copycat everyone.
Yeah, and in saying that, that's actually another topic that I wanted to go into, is that how much of it is playstyles, and then how much of it is what is better. I mean, I guess we sort of talked about it already, but I mean, personally, I think there needs to be more objectivity. Sometimes I look at someone's comp, for example, in APAC North, I saw a Bloodhound Watson crypto comp, right? In the finals, and I thought to myself,
there was a Mirage as well.
Yeah, Mirage, and I was am I missing something? Is there truly something that I'm missing, or is this comp actually better for this team because of the players, or is that comp actually bad? Right? Am I missing something?
Yeah, I think yeah, players sometimes pick what they are most comfortable of, but I feel in those scenes, besides EU and NA, they just play what they feel like sometimes, and they play they have nothing to lose. Where in EU or NA, you can see people being more careful on what they are doing, thinking more about the game, thinking more about the dangers of doing stuff. And I feel like some of the other scenes, they just play the game like let's go, like it's a ranked, like it's another day at the job. And yeah, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. I don't think it's the best way to approach Apex, but it can work. That's the thing. It can work. But yeah, it depends. It just depends a lot. But I don't think like you can run away a lot from the meta, like playing Crypto Blood or playing Mirage. Not in EU at least. Like if you do that, of course, like if you put an alliance playing with that or another team, another top tier team, they're gonna be able to have results. I'm sure of it. But will they be able to play for top one? I don't think so.
Right, and I think actually that's something that I I see a lot when I look at TSM, for example. Like I think, so they were playing Wraith, Gibby, Bloodhound, right? And they were playing it from Fragment East, and they were playing Zone with it, and they actually won an online tournament with it. But in the back of my mind, watching the game, it almost seemed like they were compensating for maybe how like unoptimal that comp was. By how good the players were. Like it almost made it seem like they were making that comp work because they were such good players, but it still seemed like unoptimal. And I think
exactly.
Right.
I feel like every meta there are like more optimal team comps than others. But exactly what I said before, TSM can make work like almost every comp.
Yeah, because
like if you put
players,
those three
right?
players, because they are insane.
Yeah.
But a lot of teams are just gonna try to copycat TSM, even though they don't have those insane players in their team. And if it's not an optimal comp, they're gonna struggle. They're not gonna go to finals. They're gonna have a lot of issues, and they're gonna think it's because of the players, because of because you suck, because you're not doing this, because you're not doing that. But no, it's literally you're not reading your team. You're not reading the comp that you should be using, and you're trying to do something that like one of the best teams in Apex are doing because they are good, just because of that, and not because it's the optimal comp. And maybe like some comps are optimal for top tier teams, and it doesn't mean the comp is bad. It's just like the comp is only good if you're like that good, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think an example of that was when GSD was playing Edge with Wraith Path Watson. I think I feel like there are very few teams that probably could have done that, because they're like doing consistently well playing Edge with that comp, and that comp, like it's not the worst comp for fighting, but like I think a Gibby comp generally is better for fighting on Edge. However, they made it work. I mean, not to say that comp wasn't optimal. I think it was still optimal at the time, but you know, like if you're really good,
depends on the time. Like at that time, I agree. Like it was the best comp. Like
yeah,
hands down,
definitely the best comp. But even then, like I think if I put other teams, if I gave them artillery and told them to play this playstyle, I don't think they would have maybe done as well.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You talk about GSD, and GSD literally had the best Pathfinder in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like Max Strafe, for me, it's the best Pathfinder in the game, and that's the thing. If you put another team that doesn't have the best Pathfinder in the game doing that kind of stuff, like their Pathfinder is gonna die easily. Like they're gonna make mistakes, like movement mistakes, tactical mistakes, and it's gonna be super easy to shut them down. But because it was GSD and they played so well, you weren't able to shut them down. They shut down you, not because the comp was better for playing that way, but the players were better, like generally.
Definitely. And then speaking about that, and also sort of what we just talked about in terms of like TSM, I want to talk about like the NA versus EU meta, because that actually gets brought up a lot, and there are clear differences in like the comps and characters that NA and EU play, which is strange because we're all playing the same game, right? So you would think that they'd be similar. However, they're not. I mean, this goes for every region. Like every region is playing different comps, and obviously there are like similarities, but like, can you talk about what you think is happening in that regard? And also, can you like? I guess I'll ask another question after that, but no, I guess I'll ask it now. Like, you were talking about data and like practicing a comp to know if it's good, right? Do you think maybe Like, does any not scrimming have anything to do with that, do you think? Or no?
A little bit, yes. Like I think the gap that was made, like you can see top teams changing in EU way more often than in NA. Like the top teams in NA are almost always the same, like the top 10 teams. Like it doesn't change a lot. And even if like one team gets there, it's because they were good anyways. But not like in EU. Like in EU, if you check the finals, like there's way more teams like changing around, teams qualifying to playoffs that were not the teams, like top teams. I'm talking about the top teams. And I feel like that's mainly because people don't scream. And I guess like it's kind of good that it's kind of good for the top teams in NA not to scream, because they don't give weapons for the lower tier teams to catch up. Like they have never like played with TSM full send, and they gonna play against TSM full send on the tournament where you are not confident, where you feel shaky, where you don't really know what to do, because competitive it's different from ranks or from like those scrims that you played before. And I guess in that regard, that's the biggest difference from you, because in EU, like not now, like the scrims in EU are bad now, but when they were good, and they were good for a long time, and even now if you play GLL Cup, it's pretty decent. You can check things. Like there's way more teams trying to play for that top 1 spot. Like there's way more teams trying to get to the final and get to that tier 1 tier. And with that, you create a more competitive, more try-hard scene, where everyone is trying to play different things. Everyone is trying to outsmart the others. While in NA, I feel like the top teams don't try to outsmart the other teams because they don't need to. Like they know they are better. They know they're gonna outdamage anyone that stands in their way. So they don't have the need to think that deeply about the game, because they don't have the struggle, basically. Doesn't mean like they're gonna struggle in like LAN events. I still feel like, for example, TSM or other top teams in NA will gonna do good, but not as much as EU teams. Because like I said, like TSM is gonna do good because they are good. That's it. Not because they are approaching the game correctly. Like they are, like Imperial is super smart. Like other teams have super smart IGLs, but most of the teams are not pushing themselves tactically where they could be, or are not pushing themselves to the level they should be. While in EU, everyone is pushing themselves, because if you don't push yourself, you're gonna lose. You're gonna happen like Cooler, that were not able to reach playoffs, and other teams that like have great players, and maybe in NA they were going to be able to go to playoffs like easily, and EU it was not possible, not because they were bad, but because tactically they weren't able to catch up, basically.
Yeah, and that's a good point actually about how like the top teams in NA stay the same, because if you actually look, I'm gonna pull it up for myself really quick, because let's see. So if you look at like if you look at the top teams in the autumn circuit playoffs, right? And you look at the top teams in I should have pulled this up earlier. 1 second. So if you look at, for example, the top 5 in the autumn circuit playoffs, so it's the Site de France, New Esports, Alliance, LG, and Magicians, right? And then if you look at it in the summer playoffs, it's GSD, North, Kick, Nessie, and Third Impact. So 5 completely different teams. Obviously, some of these teams they still made the playoffs. I mean, not all of them, but some of them were still in the playoffs. I know, like North and Nessie were still in top 10. However, and Third Impact, they were all in top 10. However, like the fact that the top 5 in EU changed completely from the summer to the autumn is like saying something, right? Because these are for the most part the same players. So what changed it? I mean, obviously the meta, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like the meta in EU changed so many times since the first qualifier of autumn, like the first qualifier, second qualifier, and then they removed Key C and the meta changed again. And then how the zones were being played out, that matters as well. So everything comes into play when we are talking about metas. Because even if your meta is working, for example, before Last Chance, they changed the zones. So even if your team with the zone changes, that's enough for your team to not do that well. If you're not working on that and you're not aware of what changes did the zones cause, because like I said, like even if you read the meta correctly, you need to approach the game correctly as well, and you need to approach each zone and your dropping spot and the teams around you. Like you need to think, and in EU at least you need to think about all that. Like we weren't able to get that second place if we didn't do that type of work, because in the server, like screaming and practicing, we didn't have any time. We were basically a mix, but outside of the server, like I did everything I could, like literally everything. I saw all the GLL cups from all the regions, like all the like quarterfinals, semifinals, final, like all the zones. I studied every single team that was playing on my lobby, what their comp was, what their tendencies were, like in each of different zones, what the tendencies of what those teams were, because some teams, more the teams around us, like what they normally do if the zone is skyhook, what they normally do if the zone is thermal, what the normal rotation path if the zone is sorting, and that type of thing. Some teams like miss out, or like don't really do that type of work, because okay, we are good, we're gonna do good, but Apex is not like that. Like sometimes Apex is Apex, and sometimes things don't go your way, and most of the times it's because you're not doing your homework, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And like, you were just talking about how, like, looking at the tendencies of teams, like where teams play for zones. So GSD was doing that. I mean, all the time. I pretty much every like top EU team was doing that season 6. But with how the zones changed, all of that went away. You had to essentially relearn all of that.
Yeah,
Because I mean, even if the zone pulled to the same place, like zone 3 to 5, 3 to 4 or whatever would pull like differently, and that meant like teams would have to play in different areas. So that was actually
yeah,
really interesting.
exactly. Like the position that you take, like everything like comes into play when you're talking about the playoff final where everyone is playing to get that first place. It's different from playing scrims. It's different from playing GLL Cup. It's different from playing like even ALGS, like quarter, semis, final. Like every stage has a different feeling to the game, and I feel like it has a different approach to the game. And yeah, that's basically it. Like, and I feel like in NA particularly, people don't have to do that work because they are so much better than all the other teams sometimes, that they don't feel like they have to do it. And I feel like some teams in NA could literally win every single tournament if they did that homework, if they had that work around them, like I feel like they could do. Because and I talk about like other regions, and I follow, like, for example, South America a lot, and there is a lot of talent in each and every region, like individual talent, mechanical talent. There's in every region. What differs is like the experience in the game, the knowledge, and the way you approach the game. Because if you are not screaming, if you're not the other teams are not pushing you, you're gonna get comfortable because you're owning your region. And that's not good when like lands come around and when everyone has to fight for like $1 million or whatever.
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. Like I've actually been saying this to myself a lot, but like, yeah, you can make up for a lot of like bad meta reading or like unoptimal play, just because of like skill disparity in a lobby, obviously. Um, but actually, I want to talk more about you looking into South America. Like, what prompted you to do that? Like, or what about like APAC North or APAC South? Like, how much of those regions do you watch?
Uh, I watch more South America than
Okay.
than the other regions. More NA, like first EU, then NA, then SA. And I watch more because like since I'm Portuguese, the language is the same. Because most of the players are Brazilian, so like
Okay.
we have like a close communication with them. And I was actually going to play this playoff in South America. I was not going to play in EU.
Like you were gonna
Almost
move there.
everything. Yeah, I was going to move only for the playoff, like only for like last chance and playoff.
Really?
Yeah, but things fell through like almost last minute because like okay, the pandemic, like I had COVID in my house, so and other like tiny details. But yeah, everything was sorted out for us to go there. Like, and I had to do that study. Like, I wasn't going blindfolded um,
Wait,
for a region that I don't really know.
let's talk about that more. Like, so what was your reasoning? Like, did you want to learn how they played, or like, yeah, I want to hear
Uh,
about that more.
Mainly, like my biggest reason on moving there was to have a closer community, because in EU, since we are Portuguese and we are like there's no Portuguese players basically.
Oh, so you
It's me
wanted
and
to move there though, like permanently?
yeah, not like permanently, but almost permanently. Like we were going to move back and forth basically. Like that was the deal. We were going to sign a contract with tier one Brazilian team,
Oh,
and
okay.
like we had almost everything sorted out, and it was basically like for us to have a chance to have a region of our own, like
Right.
putting that up to quotes, because like everyone talks the same language, we understand everyone, we knew everyone in the scene, and it was going to be something that we felt it was going to enhance us as a players, not inside the server, because we were going to practice in EU as well. Like we were going to bring the team to EU to practice, and then we play most of the tournaments there. So like the EU practice, it was going to continue because I knew that we needed that. We couldn't just move to SA and stay there because there was no scrims, there was no like things to push us forward. And our end goal is always like the LAN events, the majors. Like even though the world situation is like this, like we're seeing the future differently, and that's the main thing that made us do this type of decision making.
That's actually really cool. I don't know if you watch any League of Legends at all, but actually, in like season one League of Legends, a European team, CLG EU, went to Korea to actually compete in the Korean like League of Legends circuit, and it definitely helped them. It actually, I mean, it's kind of a different case, but actually, it's. I mean, there's definitely like a parallel there, like between going and being in like two different regions, obviously for different reasons. But like, I'm sure like even if you had moved there, like you would probably learn something from playing in that you might have not even learned from playing.
Yeah,
in EU.
exactly. Like every time you push yourself and you're in front of a new reality, I feel like you have to adapt, and to adapt the best, you have to think about the way you see the game and the way you see things. And yeah, most of the times you're gonna realize something that you were missing because you're so used to what you're doing. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, a lot of things that I was seeing and watching, and one of the things was that we were going to play Caustic in SA, and that's one of the things that made me play Caustic in playoff finals, because we never played Caustic in World's Edge before playoffs.
Right.
Like all the qualifiers, we played Watson World's Edge, and we made that decision based on what I studied in South America, because I was watching the meta and I was saying like, okay, so Caustic is 100% the best thing for us to try to win the tournament, like to play for first place.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna stay in EU. We qualified for playoffs, so it's fine. Should we change? So like, should we keep? No, like the study that I did in South America, like what teams were doing there was similar to what teams were doing here, like not at the same level, but it was similar. So if my study was correct, like this was the things that we needed to do. Like even without any practice, like we didn't really practice the tactical part. It was all like the study I did, but at the same time, I knew that Postkill, that is my teammate, it's one of the best caustics in the game, and we played a lot like together since the beginning, and he knows the way I think and what normally I want him to do in the game. So it was super smooth, super easy to apply that in EU, and like we didn't win because of inexperience, in my opinion, because we should have won the tournament. Like other teams in our situation would have won that tournament.
Okay. So, actually, I bought the caustic and South America thing. So, do they? I truthfully don't watch South America, not for any specific reason, but just because I follow like EU, NA, APAC North, and APAC South. So it's like, you know, I there's only so much time in the day. But
yeah, of course.
When you were watching them, were they just playing a lot of caustic, or what was it that like?
No, they were playing like it was more a mix from EU and NA. Like some teams copied NA, some teams copied EU, and a lot of teams like was pretty similar to NA approach. While they knew they were so much better, they didn't really need to work for spots. Like they could just play edge and like clean the lobby from the edge. Mm-hmm. So he thought like, okay, so let's play more position. Let's play like to win, and for us to have the most chances to win, if we can have the best position, it's caustic, like hands down. So we saw EU, and EU had a meta shift where everyone started playing Gibby caustic or and full edge, or like crypto Gibby or blood Gibby and full edge. So we thought like, okay, so if we have the best spot to play, and I saw that caustic was the best option. Okay, it's still the best option. So let's just run that play, run that comp, and let's hope for the best. And it worked pretty smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. Yeah, I mean, I've been an advocate for caustic basically since Alliance played him, and it was actually really odd to me that no one was playing him, even in like the Watson meta, because Jen like eats Watson's like pylon generator eats caustic's ult, right? However, back then caustic's barrel didn't get eaten by Watson's gen. Yeah. It was also just pure RNG whether or not the other team could break it before you. So you could actually just like chuck barrels at people and play him super offensively, even without needing to like break EMP or break gen. Sorry.
Yeah, and that was a thing. Like they saw that gap on the meta. They saw they could exploit it, and they did it. And a lot of teams in EU tried to replicate that, and they weren't able. Like they aren't able to replicate our comp now in EU or other comps, just because it's not only about what they are doing. It's about what the actual player is thinking and behaving in the game. Like, it's not actually like, okay, so Caustic is strong because the barrels go through the Watson panel. Okay, we just do that and we win as well. No, that's not, because, for example, at that time, Caustic needed a little bit more thinking about positionment, about what you're doing in fights and how you're helping your teammates, because it was so easy to kill Caustics. And there was not that crutch about like Gibby, where you get shot, okay, let's bubble and let's reset. And if you do the same movement with a Caustic, you're fucked, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
And like Alliance did that perfectly, and they pretty much were the first ones to show that if you try different things and you're actually good at what you're doing, like you master that character and you have a player that is actually good with that character, you can pull it off, and it's actually good or broken. Like they won one OT, if I remember.
Yeah, OT too.
And they were constantly doing good results, and so it was not bad, and it was not only about the player, because they changed the Lowly with IPN. Like Lowly was playing Caustic, and then IPN came and played Caustic, and they were playing good as well. Yeah. Because I felt like it was not because IPN was that insane Caustic player, because I never saw IPN playing Caustic before, but in my head, I don't really know the reality, but in my head was like, okay, they passed the knowledge to IPN, so IPN now knows how to approach the game with Caustic, and sometimes you need to have those persons getting you that knowledge. Like sometimes only by yourself you're not going to get there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's actually again a similar thing to TSM because so in NA complexity just like started winning everything with Wraith Gibby Bloodhound, right? But really what defined complexity was like it wasn't the Bloodhound. It was like their playstyle and their rotations, their macro movement, how they moved around the map, and like a lot of their zone knowledge, like going into zone late and finding like that path of least resistance, right? But so like you can't just copy a comp and sort of like try to fit it into like a different shape. Like you can't force a comp that's meant for for one playstyle into another playstyle, and I think that's actually what happened a lot with like the Caustic. Like after Alliance won that OT2 with Caustic, a lot of teams like started trying to play Caustic, but like I remember watching Alliance and like the defining part about that playstyle, other than the Caustic, was like it was getting the Caustic to late game. Like the teams that were copying Alliance couldn't figure out how to get Caustic to late game.
Exactly.
It was the rotations. It was the macro play. The Alliance often found themselves on like the least populated side of the map going into end zone, or where they had to do like the least amount of work, right? Where there's less attention towards them, right?
And one thing that, for example, really good teams are good at is that when you're playing Edge, most of the times you have to fight. You cannot like just hide every time. And they know when to fight, and like they can read like, okay, this is the fight that is gonna unlock that end game. So if we win this and we prepare this correctly, we're gonna win this.
Yep.
So and a team like Alliance does that a lot. Like they don't fight a lot, but when they fight, they do it like because it's worth it. It's not just because they want to fight. It's not just because of position. It's because like that fight is gonna take them to the win. And even if they lose, they're gonna say, okay, we lose, but we lost trying to win, and not like, okay, we did this random fight, we lost, okay, we should have won, blah blah blah, like most of the teams.
Yeah, most definitely. Like having like a streamlined, methodical approach to like getting into late game with this comp, and like how to work around that is what actually like differentiated like Alliance with these other teams. And also the same thing with complexity. These other teams, you know, like
exactly. Like
everyone
a lot of teams
copied them, everyone, but no one actually knew how complexity was playing.
Exactly, because even if you see this team streams and see the communication, you don't actually see what's behind the communication, what's behind the thought process. Like you can see like what they want to do and try to understand, but most of the times you don't have the knowledge or the experience with that comp or with those players' minds to actually know what they are trying to do or what they are trying to do in the game. Yeah, that's basically it. If I remember, like Complexity started playing with Bloodhound way before all the teams played.
Before he could scan beacon.
They were not, yeah, exactly, and they were not even like winning tournaments consistently. Mm-hmm. But when the time came, they started to win, and people, okay, let's replicate, and we're gonna win as well. But they forgot that Complexity has that experience of playing with Bloodhound, and a Bloodhound that doesn't even take zones. And yeah, that's basically like the experience of the player, the experience of the comp itself. Like, you know, automatically what's the good spots to play, what's the bad spots to play, what's the good fights to take, what's the bad fights. Like, you have that experience, and that's why I think it's gonna miss for a lot of teams now in EU. Like, a lot of teams are changing their comp and forcing comps just because it's meta, and it's not even good for their teams or their players. And they're just gonna realize that on the tournament day, basically. I feel like a lot of teams are expecting something, and it's not really gonna happen in the 15th. And they're gonna say, okay, because it's this shit meta, and it's not the shit meta. It's because they approach the game the wrong way. People starting to play Caustic 1 week and Crypto 1 week before of the tournament, and seeing that it's not working, not because the scrims are bad, but because the players don't have enough time to learn the characters. Like the first times I played crypto, I was a shit crypto. Like, okay, the character is strong, you can still do some things, but it was super, super bad. Like the first time some players play Caustic, or the first time some players play whatever the character. So you need that time to adapt. You need that time to actually show that comp is good. And yeah, when everyone sees the comp is good, okay, let's try it. But it's not that easy. It's not just, okay, this is broken, I'll use it and I'm gonna win every tournament. Like, it's not like that. Like Complexity won both circuits, I think, in NA. If I'm not mistaken.
They got second in the summer circuit, but they had the most points. You know.
Oh
so
yeah,
like,
exactly. Second in summer, and people are like, okay, we just do what Complexity is doing, and we're gonna win as well. And that didn't happen. Because it's not that easy. Like, it's way more work you need to put in, way more thought into it, and you need to actually think about the game and think about your players and think about your opponents and where they are landing and what they are doing and your rotations. Like, everything comes into play.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like specifically about complexities, I remember like when Complexity started winning with Bloodhound Gibby, a lot of people were they thought that Complexity was just like an ape team that just ran around and like just killed people and fought and whatever. Which, like, when you're an Edge, like you said, inevitably you do have to fight. But the thing is, I would track them during OT finals, and they actually weren't fighting until like they rarely ever killed anyone until like zone 3. And to me that signified that the rotations were very like methodical, and they were like, even though they were on Edge, they were getting to late game with rarely having to like just like run around and just kill a bunch of people. But the thing is, in NA, like right after Complexity started winning with that comp, there were teams that just started. Like I remember, for example, I was playing in the GLL Masters like Summer League, right? B lobby. I was a complete noob, right? But there, like the team in Containment started running Wraith, Gibby, Bloodhound right after Complexity won with it. We were in Artillery. Right after they would loot Containment, they would just run at us literally every game, and it never worked. Like half the time they would die, half the time we would die, and in the entire time I was like, this isn't how Complexity plays. Like, this is not at all how they play. So
yeah, exactly. And people, and that's the thing, like, they don't know the thought process. Like, they see Complexity aping. Okay, if we play this comp, we need to ape as well. And that's not the truth. That's not the reality. Like, maybe Complexity in the beginning were aping a little bit because maybe they didn't really knew what worked and what not, and they were trying different things. They were pushing their comp to the limits. But once they realized like what is good and what is bad for that comp, they started playing methodically. They started to actually know when to fight and what not to fight. What do they need to force, and when do they need to let go and just rotate. That's mainly what the teams that are more experienced with the comp are doing. Like,
yeah,
sometimes you see them doing one thing, but that doesn't mean that if you do that thing that is going to be correct, because maybe they are doing that thing just to try out different stuff. Maybe they are doing that thing because there's one player on that team that just wants to do random stuff, and they are not really thinking it like as methodical as they could. But yeah, that's the main thing about Apex. You need to have someone to actually think about the game and actually think about your team as well as like individuals who have their strengths and their weaknesses, and try to work around that, and not only like watching others and, okay, this is good, okay, I'm gonna replicate that and it's gonna be fine for me, because it's not. It doesn't work like that. I feel like it's a little bit like, it's not as deep, of course, but I feel like Apex is gonna be closer, and you talked about it, like it's gonna be starting to be closer at League of Legends. Like, every region is gonna have his playstyle. Every region is gonna have different comps. The more characters into play, the more comps are going to have. The more good comps is gonna Apex have, and yeah, you cannot just like replicate others. That doesn't work. You need to have your own playstyle. You need to figure out what's good for your team inside the meta, and even if you want to go a little bit off meta, you need to be sure, okay, I'm going off meta, but it's because it's the best for my team, and not just because I want to try new things or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, definitely. We're almost like at the 1 hour mark, so I want to go into like the last topic, which is obviously related to like meta stuff, but I want to talk about Horizon and Olympus, and also like maybe like if there are any sleeper comps right now. But I guess I want to talk about Olympus first. I guess first, like, what do you think of it? Do you think there's any potential for it in comp? Like, are the problems with it so drastic that it can't be fixed?
Yeah, like when EA sent that survey to ask pro players if we should compete in Olympus, I said no, and I said we shouldn't play in Olympus unless it has like a deep change on the map. Just because, like, first of all, it doesn't have like enough points of interest for people to loot and to split up. Like, teams will have to fight a lot in early game, and if you don't fight, you're not gonna have like loot at all. Like, you're gonna have like 3 white shields and a few guns. And I feel like at least I didn't compete a lot. Like, I saw that NA competed a little bit more in Olympus, like Esports Arena and stuff. I didn't compete a lot in Olympus, but from the ranked and from like small tournaments, I felt like it wasn't really what Apex is. You know, it's too open field, really long distances, and the guns are not supposed to work like that. Like, a lot of guns in Apex are supposed to work like close mid range, not long range, and the map was so wide open. Like, you were going to be forced to play caustic, to play Gibby. I mean, you were going to be forced to use the cars to move around and to come to some wacky playstyles. Like, it's gonna be Apex. Like, if they decided to be played, you need to work on the map. You need to like see what's the best or not. But I don't really think it will be fun. I don't think it will be like consistent. Like, teams were not going to be able to be as consistent as they are in World's Edge, because even if you study a lot the map geometry, it's just weird. For me, it's just weird. Like, I loved KC, I love World's Edge. Like, I like Olympus as a normal or ranked map, but as a competitive map, I just feel it weird. Like, super, super weird. And I felt like they had to change a lot of stuff for it to be like a normal map for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's fair. That seems like a shared sentiment between like pro players, is that like the map geometry and how open the map is sort of enables you to play in ways that aren't healthy for the game. But even in saying that, I'm not gonna lie. Like, selfishly, I kind of want them to play Olympus, and it's not because I think the map is good, but I want to push people to read the meta faster in Apex, because again, the whole theme of Autumn was that like some teams read the meta, it was just too slow. They read the meta too slow. So so selfishly, I kind of want them to play Olympus for like 1OT or something, because I really want to push players to like think more deeply about the game. And like just to force them to do that. But again,
Yeah, like,
still the map
even
does need work for sure.
being a weird map, top teams will still be top teams in my opinion. They were going to have to change their like KC. Like, KC is super different from World's Edge. No one was expecting KC to come in when it came out, like, again, and no one was expecting like they adding KC so fast into competitive. People were saying, "Oh, we are not ready. We don't have enough zones. We don't have enough study," and yeah, you could see like there was teams that were clearly super strong in KC that were not in World's Edge, and that was one of our cases. That's why we got third place in that first qualifier, because we had a super good KC and a super bad World's Edge, and that happened with a lot of teams. Like, and I support like having different maps and keep adding maps to the competitive play, so you could like push teams to the limits, like push teams tactically to the limits, and see who adapts first and who can read the map. Because if you are good mechanically, you're gonna good in either map. It's all about like your decisions. Tactical decisions is what is going to matter the most when you're changing maps. So
yeah,
I think, yeah, like, it will be good. I don't really like Olympus. I'm really expecting for them to bring back KC, a little bit different KC, but for them to bring back KC. And if they want to keep adding maps, like, be my guest. I would love that. I literally would love that. And one thing, like with this change about the fourth player, like now you can have a sub. I really think that if you have different maps and the more characters you have in game, the more the top teams will have to have more players to the roster, like at least one more player with different characteristics, so you can change it up in different maps for different tactics. Like I think that will be awesome for Apex and for the game itself. I don't know if the game is gonna be big enough for teams to invest in that way, but I would love to see that.
Yeah, definitely. I actually think like being able to test a team's like character pool is actually a really important part of like competitive esports. I mean, this is like a legend based game. Like even though it is an FPS, this is also like a legend based game, and I would love to have a point in competitive Apex where we can actually like test how good people are at like multiple legends and multiple maps. And obviously there is like a limit to how many there should be, because like if there's 10 maps, like you can't prepare for 10. There's only so much time in a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Maps. But like potentially 3. Maybe, I don't know. We'd have to try, but at least 2. You know, like I think.
Yeah, exactly. Like when there was KC, I was loving that. Like those 2 games in KC, two games in World's Edge. It was just refreshing. For me, when I was playing in the tournament, every time one map was not going my way, I knew that in the other map, like I had a new opportunity. And I feel like in tournaments where there is only World's Edge, for example, I felt like if the first 2 games are not going good, you're going to have the same mentality, like, okay, this is fucked. Like, okay, you're always trying to do better, of course, but at the same time, on the back of your mind, you don't feel like it's a new opportunity. You don't feel like everyone goes back to stage 1. It's like, okay, I'm way behind. Like, I need to overcompensate for the points that I am not doing. And with KC and World's Edge, every time I do bad in KC, I was like, okay, but in World's Edge, it's a new map, new drop spots, a new team contesting us. So different things are going to happen, and maybe we can actually win the game and come back from this group stage. And that feeling and that adaptation, I really loved while the 2 maps were active. Like, I understand why they removed KC, and I feel like, yes, they could add Olympus or add KC again and keep rotating maps, like, and only have 2 competitive maps, and giving the heads up for the players, like, okay, now it's KC and World's Edge, now it's World's Edge and Olympus, and people are always like practicing both maps, always like keep trying to come up with new things, because new seasons bring new characters, bring new metas, and even though it's the same map, different approaches are needed. So I would love to have that. Like, I don't like those players that keep saying bring back Wraith, Watson, Pathfinder, bring back and be always World's Edge. Always World's Edge, always the same meta, because it's the best meta, the most enjoyable. Like,
it's
not really.
Anyways,
it gets boring. It gets boring. Like, it gets repetitive. Yeah. And it doesn't push the players to the limits. Like, you already know how to play like that. Okay, so just do that for 2 or 3 years. Like, it's not what I enjoy, basically.
Also,
and it's only my opinion. Like, it's not really.
It exposes the one tricks too. So we need meta changes so one tricks can stop being one tricks. Because that's a huge. It's not like a pet peeve. I'm just like, you should be able to play one more character, like more than one character. Like, for example, I think Path is exceptionally good on King's Canyon. Like, I think he still would be now, even though his hitbox is trash, and like on World's Edge he's not at like nowhere near as good, I think. But like, you know, even for the like in that sense, I think that's really good for the game. But yeah, I guess the last thing I have to talk about, and sort of related to Olympus, is Horizon. What do you think about her? Do you think she has any potential in the meta? Personally, I am obsessed with her. I know that she has like some shortcomings in terms of like comp, but yeah, go ahead. I
just feel like in this point in time, I haven't really put like deep thoughts into Horizon. Maybe in season 8, but at this point, like I just see like Wraith and a Recon character being played out, and then the third character being kind of a utility-based character. And since Horizon doesn't give that much, and when I say utility, like it's like defensive utility, not offensive. Like you need a sustain in Apex, at least in EU Apex.
Resources or like caustic gas, basically, like stuff like that is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Like something that can push teams not to push you.
Yeah.
Something that when you're making a fight and you finish the fight, you can reset your team, even though a team is trying to pressure you. Things like that, I feel like it's super important. And Horizon doesn't really give you that. You can play like you can. I think the only character that you can put out it's the Recon character and put it like Wraith, Horizon, and Gibby or Caustic, but more Gibby. But I don't really think at this point in time it's really that worth it. It's not that it's bad. It's just because other options are better, in my opinion, are more solid, more like people already know what they are doing, what to expect. But yeah, Horizon as a character, as an individual character, is super good. That's why it's so used in ranked, like to fight and to play aggressively. But competitive, you need a little bit more sustain. And if you play just full edge with that type of character, I feel like it's better to have like a Gibby Caustic than like a Gibby Horizon. And just because of that, like I know that some EU teams are going to use it, but not any top tier team. I mean, so
Yeah.
I guess like that just shows like it's like some teams are just trying to see if they can like do something different off the meta to surprise. But I feel like the teams that already have studied all these metas, and like you need a meta change to put Horizon basically into competitive, and even then I don't know if it's really worth it. But it's a really super strong character. I don't think she needs a buff. I think the other characters need to not a nerf, but to get changed, and so you can think about putting her in your 3-man squad.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to clarify because you said meta change, but for the people watching in chat, sometimes meta change isn't like changing characters specifically. Like sometimes the map changes things. What's in the replicator can change things. The zone algorithm can change things. Like a lot of things can change the character meta that isn't like changing the characters themselves. Like for example, I think Horizon. I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think Horizon could like if Kings Canyon comes back, Horizon if you drop map room could be good. But that's the only scenario where I think she could be good. But that's like an example of like a meta change that could that like makes a character stronger. I mean, it doesn't make her stronger for any of the other drop spots, but like you get
Exactly.
what I
And
mean,
even like
room
having that
changes things.
drop slot, yeah, they can think about like, for example, when they bring ban KC, having like some spots where you can do the same as map room, but in other places, and other characters are good as well, and you don't have to rely that much on recon characters. And for example, if you want to keep using crypto, it's good because crypto does not only give you the first zone, it gives you other zones and gives you other things. But if you want to play like more aggressively and having the zone as well, you can play Horizon and landing on one of those spots. Like it just depends.
Yeah.
And depends on a lot of stuff. And one thing that it depends as well is what the best teams on your region are doing, because that's the most important thing that sets up the meta. That's why the metas are different in every region in the world, just because the best teams are doing something and people have to work around that. You cannot really like sometimes you cannot just play what you think is best. You need to play around what your opponents are using and what is best to use against them.
Yeah, like APAC North, for example. Like APAC North is running Wraith Crypto. Like everyone is running Wraith Crypto Revenant, Wraith Crypto Caustic, Wraith Revenant Caustic, a bunch of stuff. And like even at the time, if Wraith Pathfinder Watson is really good, I don't even know how good that comp would have been in that region when literally everyone is crypto. You know.
Exactly.
So that's a good point. Like team compositions aren't good in a vacuum. They have to be good in the context of the lobby that you're playing in. That's a super good point.
Yeah, and that's why, like, for example, in our team, we played Caustic in playoffs, and now we are playing Gibby, and our thought into it is like, I'm not really gonna explain the thought process, but in my opinion, just because we won that tournament, we got second place in that tournament, and we did a super good tournament, doesn't mean like, okay, this comp is broken, it's good against every team, it's good against every lobby, and we're just gonna run this until we don't want it anymore. No, I just feel like we need different things and different utility for different situations. And I feel like, for example, Gibby is gonna give us more options inside the game of what we can do. While Caustic was leaving us with less options, and like good options nonetheless, but less options. And I feel like for people to have more consistency, we needed that change. And yeah, that's basically it. Because in the playoff, I knew all the teams that were playing there. I had like 2 weeks to prepare for those 20 teams, but in next ALGS, I don't know what teams are gonna play in my group. I don't know if I'm gonna get contested. I don't know what team is playing Frag East and if they are going to ape me or not. So
Yeah.
That comes in mind, like that comes in play, and everything should be like studied and worked around and analyzed. Doesn't matter, like you cannot be stuck on one thing, on old results or what the others are doing. You need to account for everything in the game.
Yeah, I mean, even just thinking about this next winter circuit, like it's pretty much it's the exact same meta as this autumn circuit, right? But this winter OT, this next one, it's pretty much the exact same meta. Like the characters everything's the exact same. However, like people are realizing things now that they didn't back then, so they're going to be playing different things, so you have to play differently, so that changes how you're going to play. So yeah, that's a really good point. But otherwise, I'm going to let you go. It's been an hour and 15. I appreciate it so much. Bro. I knew I would keep this at 1 hour, but you just have such insightful things to say. I had to keep talking, you know. But I appreciate it a lot. If you have any shoutouts, go ahead, but otherwise you should link your socials in the chat if you want to, or just shout them out.
It's K4shera everywhere. K4shera with a Ford. I want to shout out my teammates. They are amazing, and they are helping me a lot, because I don't play this game alone, and my results, it's their results as well. And if I ever got any good result and every good placement, it's because the players that are playing with me and are trusting on my work. So I want to shout out to that, and shout out to the people that came from my socials and the people that support me, that are there in the chat. Like, I want to thank to all of them. And yeah, that's basically it. Like, I want to thank you for the invitation. I think it was really insightful, and when you speak this type of thing out loud, like it helps you to think about things and to realize certain things. So it's always good to have these conversations. I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, you know, like Twitter is the only place.
Different things. It's gonna happen 100%. Like everyone thinks about the game and Apex and having a team differently. Right. So. Yeah,
at least you have nuance here. Like that's the goal of this platform to have like nuance, like more than just like a few words or whatever, because that's what it's really about. Because I've noticed that a lot of times people are agreeable. The more you like have nuance and like the more like thoughtful the discussion is, like the less you say, the less agreeable your take is, you know. So that's what I've noticed. But again, anyways, thank you so much, dude. I appreciate it. Shout out to New Esports. I mean, they were on that crypto wave early, and you know, I just had to talk to the man behind the brains. So, yeah. See you guys.